It's a bright May morning in 1919, and the atmosphere in Philip Esdaile's Chelsea studio is one of celebration. A group of friends has gathered for a celebratory breakfast, enjoying the easy, polite rhythms of post-war life. There's the narrator, a novelist who is mostly there to observe, and Monty Rook, an eccentric and empathetic artist. There's also Audrey Cunningham, who is engaged to Monty, and several others, all caught up in the comfortable social masks that people wear to keep the chaos of the world at bay. But that comfort is shattered in an instant. A sudden, violent crash erupts just outside the window. A plane has gone down nearby, and in the chaos of the impact, 2 men are sent plummeting through the air, landing heavily on the studio's glass roof. In the immediate, frantic aftermath of the crash, something strange happens. Philip Esdaile, the host, simply vanishes. He isn't seen for 30 minutes. When he finally re-emerges, he isn't panicked or bloodied. Instead, he comes up from his cellar looking strangely calm, almost unnervingly composed. He's carrying a candle and a bottle of liqueur, as if he's just stepped out of a quiet room rather than a site of a violent accident. His behaviour is mechanical, almost rehearsed, as if he's trying to perform the role of a normal man while his internal world is spinning. There's even a physical oddity that doesn't quite add up. Despite the dampness and the wreckage at the crash site, his clothes are suspiciously dry. As the guests settle into a state of uneasy tension, the details of the crash begin to leak out. It is revealed that Chummy Smith, a young, charismatic pilot and a close friend to many in the group, has survived the crash. But there's a deeper, more personal layer of tension simmering beneath the surface. It turns out that Chummy has been having a clandestine affair with Joan, Esdaile's wife. The investigation into what actually happened on that roof begins to move from the accidental to the criminal. The men find a hole in the studio's glass and, more importantly, a fired pistol. Monty Rook admits that he was the one who retrieved the weapon from the roof after seeing Chummy Smith near it. Now, the men are caught in a profound moral crisis. They want to protect Chummy. He's a wartime comrade, a man who has seen the horrors of the air war. But they are haunted by the fact that a man named Maxwell lies dead in a mortuary. There is a sense that something happened on that roof that doesn't fit the narrative of a simple accident. As the days pass, the ripples of this event begin to tear at the fabric of their social circle. Audrey Cunningham, Monty's fiancée, is the most visibly affected. She doesn't have the men's ability to compartmentalize. She becomes gripped by a sense of the uncanny, a feeling that something is fundamentally wrong and hidden just out of sight. She can sense the secrecy, the way the men huddle together and speak in half-truths, and the weight of what they are carrying. Eventually, the pressure becomes too much, and she breaks off her engagement to Monty. Even the local community is pulled into the orbit of the mystery. A man named Harry Westbury becomes obsessed with a fired bullet found in his home, convinced that he has stumbled upon a massive, sprawling conspiracy involving the plane crash. The world feels like it's tilting, as if the polite, reconstructed life of post-war London is being undermined by these strange, jagged pieces of truth. The narrator, however, is the one who finally finds the thread that pulls the whole tapestry apart. He discovers a piece of physical evidence that seems almost insignificant at first, Audrey's missing engagement ring. He finds it wedged inside a small, circular hole in the studio's floorboards. This tiny hole is the key to everything. It leads to a startling realization about what Philip Esdaile was actually doing during those 30 minutes when he disappeared. He wasn't hiding in the cellar out of fear or confusion. He had turned the cellar into a makeshift projection room. By arranging the furniture in the studio to catch the light from the window, he had used the small hole in the floorboards as a pinhole camera. He sat in the dark, watching the events on the studio floor as silhouettes projected onto the cellar ceiling. He didn't just witness the aftermath. He watched the entire scene unfold from a hidden, voyeuristic vantage point. This revelation changes the nature of the mystery entirely. The question is no longer just what happened, but why it happened, and what Esdaile saw in those shadows. When the truth finally comes to light, it isn't a story of a cold-blooded murder, but something much more complex and, in its own way, more tragic. The shooting was revealed to be a pilot's pact. This was a ritualistic, grim mercy killing that had become a silent, unspoken code among WII aviators. When a comrade was mortally wounded or faced an unbearable death in the cockpit, His friends would sometimes provide a quick, certain end to prevent prolonged suffering. It was a violent act, but it was born of a desperate kind of compassion, a logic forged in the isolated, high-stakes environment of aerial warfare. The case is finally understood, and with that understanding, the social and legal tensions begin to dissolve. The secret is no longer a weapon being held over their heads, it's a shared trauma that they can finally acknowledge. The story concludes with a sense of moving on, symbolized by a double wedding for Joan and Audrey, as the characters attempt to reintegrate into a world that is trying to pretend the war never happened. The case is folded away, tucked into the archives of things that are better left unexamined. When we look at this story, we can see how Oliver Onions uses the mechanics of light and shadow to explore the very nature of truth. The pinhole camera is a perfect metaphor for how we perceive reality. Just as a pinhole camera takes a chaotic three-dimensional world and reduces it to a two-dimensional projection of light and shadow, the people in the story are trying to project a version of reality that is manageable and polite. They are trying to turn a messy, violent truth into a flat, acceptable social narrative. Esdaile, sitting in the dark, was the only one seeing the actual shadows. He saw the truth in its rawest, most distorted form, and his reaction, that mechanical, performative normalcy, was his way of trying to keep that truth from shattering the fragile peace of his social life. He was essentially acting as a human sound blimp, using his cellar to suppress the noise of the truth so that the social environment of the studio could remain undisturbed. There is also a profound tension between the civilized surface of post-war society and the raw, violent realities that people brought home with them. The characters are trying to live in a world of breakfast parties and engagements, but they are haunted by the pilot's pact. The reality of a war that demanded a different kind of morality, one that doesn't fit into the polite conversations of a Chelsea studio. The story also speaks to the changing nature of the world in 1919. The transition from the traditional, predictable power of the Navy to the unpredictable, high-speed frontier of aviation represents a world that is moving faster than its inhabitants can process. The plane crash isn't just an accident, it's a symbol of a new, modern era crashing into the old, established ways of life, leaving a trail of confusion and unanswered questions in its wake. In the end, A Case in Camera isn't just a mystery about a shooting. It's a study of how we use the tools of perception, both literal and social, to hide from the things we cannot bear to face. It suggests that the truth is often something we see only in glimpses, caught like a silhouette on a ceiling, and that once it is fully brought into the light, it changes the very shape of the world we thought we knew.